Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I had the privilege on the afternoon of Yom Kippur of reading the book of Jonah in the synagogue. I think it's one of the few books of the Bible where the reader is tempted to laugh aloud. It's full of humanity, feeling, and particularly humor. Jonah is an awkward, contentious, quarrelsome chap, but the book is full of those little human touches that make him real. Having quarreled with God, he decides to scuttle off to Tarshish. He doesn't expect a free passage. Oh no, no favors for Jonah. So he pays the fare. Where else in the Bible can you find such a pedestrian action? Of course he pays the fare. It's the thing he does. And then once on board the ship, he doesn't stand on deck with the crew, discussing the route or the weather or the state of the ship. No, he goes down to the cabin and he goes to sleep. Perfectly human reaction. The poor fellow's tired. It's a long way from Nineveh to Joppa, where he got the ship. So what is more natural than that he should go down below decks and fall asleep? And then comes the storm, and the story so beloved by children everywhere of the whale. And the humour comes over very clearly. How ridiculous can it be that a man is swallowed up, rattles around inside the beast for 3 days, and is spat out again uninjured? Here at Westminster, we used to add our own comic construction to the story because our first chairman was Frank Whaley, and many were the jokes told about Jonah and the whaley. And after all the tribulations of Jonah's return to Nineveh, the gourd and the worm that killed it, we hear that the inhabitants of that great city couldn't tell their right hand from their left. If anything was calculated to damn the poor Ninevans, that must be it. How idiotic could a great city's people be with that disability? After all, this is one of the first things you teach children, how to tell their right hand from their left. You can't even tell someone how to find a place if they don't understand that. And then the final words of the book, and much cattle. Were the cattle, we wonder, also unable to tell their left hoof from their right? So what is the point of this delightfully humorous, fundamentally human character? And are there other parts of the Old Testament as funny as poor old Jonah? Well, yes, there are. It was claimed at one time that there was no humor in the Bible. Not true. Take, for instance, Balaam and the ass. The king of Moab instructs Balaam, a prophet, not an Israelite, to confront the Israelites and put a curse on them. So he gets onto the ass and he takes 2 servants, but the ass refuses to follow the straight path and goes off into the field. And then the angel appears and prevents the ass from moving any further into the field, so she follows the narrow track between 2 walls, hits the wall, and poor old Balaam stubs his toe on the stones. The poor animal can't proceed. The path's too narrow for an ass, its rider, the 2 servants, and now the angel. So what is she to do? She does what any mule would do. She simply lies down and refuses to go any further. But unlike your average pack animal, this one can speak. Balaam doesn't seem in the least surprised at this, but then she does what you would do faced with such a predicament. She blames her owner. What did I ever do to you for you to treat me so? It's not fair. They sort themselves out with God's help, of course, and Balaam refuses to curse the Israelites, and it all ends happily ever after. But like the story of Jonah, the Bible uses humor to make a point. to attract attention, to hold an audience. And an interesting extra in the story, rather like the whale, is that the ass is female. And like most biblical women, most Jewish women, she knows her own mind and she doesn't hesitate to make her point. Another book in the Bible full of humorous sayings is the book of Proverbs. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion. Well, a gold ring was a valuable piece of jewellery, and a pig's snout was an extremely dirty part of a very unclean animal. And such a valuable item stuck in an unclean pig's snout was a terrible waste of good jewellery. Another is better to live on a corner of the roof than share a house with a quarrelsome wife. How many men in our day and age have constructed a shed in the garden to get out of the way of their wives? Pleasant words are as a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and health to the bones. Even this morning's Torah portion has a gleam of humor. The Tower of Babel is not just a construction in the wilderness, built of stone and mortar. It is the center of a torrent of languages whereby the people of the world struggle to understand each other. They still do. Perhaps God in his wisdom wanted to sow an element of discord within the Jewish people, which, when you think about it, is not a very difficult thing to do. We read in Psalm number 2 that he that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Bible is fond of laughter. So what's the point of humour? Jews are well known for their humour, perhaps because much of our history has been so tragic that some recompense is needed. Jews can laugh at themselves, but woe betide those who laugh at them. In Talmudic times, the rabbis told stories to illustrate to their students the philosophy of the Torah and the abstruse problems of Jewish law. And many of those stories were calculated to make the students laugh, because if you can find humor in learning, you're more likely to remember it. In the Pesachim, part of the Talmud, those rabbis asked, what happens on Pesach after a house has been cleared of chametz? A mouse enters with a piece of bread in its mouth and is later seen leaving with the bread. Can one assume, the rabbis asked, that it is the same mouse with the bread now taken out, and so the house is clean? Or could it be another mouse taking the bread out, in which case the first piece of bread may still be there, and the house has to be cleaned again? It wasn't only rabbinical scholars who used humor in this way. The medieval debate about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin is not rabbinical in origin. It was first mooted by Thomas Aquinas, but it's often used to show how useless and impractical some religious debate can be without a sense of humor. There's nothing in the Bible or anywhere else against combining religion with humor. For Jews, humor can certainly relate to religion. Two rabbis argued all night about the existence of God and finally decided against it. And the next day, one meets the other entering the synagogue before the service, and the first one says, "I thought we agreed there was no God." And the other replies, "What's that got to do with it?" The ability to laugh is believed to be exclusive to man. Animals, particularly those like us, monkeys, chimpanzees, are believed to experience something akin to laughter. They certainly make noises, panting or giggling, not unlike the physical sounds that we make. Many experiments have been attempted to prove it. If you notice the grimaces or facial expressions we often see in our own dogs and cats that resemble smiles or grins, then it is believed that these are the results of pleasure rather than what we call a sense of humor. Dolphins are among the creatures that experience a complexity of communication, a variety of clicks and buzzes and whistles, squeals of different rhythms, frequencies, lengths, as well as their capacity for self-recognition. Scientists have likened some of these sounds to laughter, though without the ability to use language between man and animal, we may never know. So did God create the Tower of Babel and the languages that followed to present man with a sense of humor. It's tempting to think so, because the ability to laugh at ourselves and at others is one of the greatest gifts possessed by man. In times of the greatest trouble, Jews have been able to laugh, or at least to smile, even while they weep.